Sisters, how are you all today? Do you find the place a bit different?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we feedback to BU previously about the projections, the screen. So by the time I talked to GS, they had already had thoughts to do it also. But sometimes details are lost in translation. Yeah. So I had originally in mind that we just have to block out those two and those two. That should be sufficient such that the projection screen is dim. It's not, not quite washed by the light. But in the end, it was a do all or nothing. So in the end, we have all the. I wonder whether they can still undo the rest, because now with the things filled up, it does feel a bit darker. Yeah. Huh? What? No, it's not the lights. Because last time the whole panel is, yeah. Can you call Mary in? Yeah. Because that side is not totally covered yet. Yeah. Because at the time I told them, then they say, we're going to do. Yeah. 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 I mean, Mary. Yeah. Just some thoughts. Because just now as you were commenting, right, like now with it filled up, it's actually darker. Yeah, it's true. So actually, that time when I was talking to GS, what I thought was to cover these two, just these two, because that is closest to the, yeah. So I don't know how it's like if, I don't know whether that can actually be removed. Yeah, but because I don't know what was the planning you all went through. Yeah, but if what I thought was needed was just to cover the two. Yeah, because the main thing is the projection screen. Yeah. But don't know, is it possible? Okay, thanks. Yeah, but we must also note that this shows how committed BU is to making the environment more conducive. Yeah, so let's put our thumbs together. Yeah. As it was, the whole place is really very conducive and very nice already. Yeah, the only reason for having the blocking up was because of the projection slides. Yeah, at noon time is very, very bright and glaring. Yeah. So maybe this may help cool down the room also. Not so hot. Yeah. So this is, you can't have your cake and eat it. You want a bright room, then it has to be a bit, yeah. Well, there are other renovations going on also, so do take note. Okay, let's go through our ritual. Who is new here? On my left, I see some young faces on my left side. Let's see. So who is new on my left? New to the SGC. I think a couple of the young faces are new.
Hi, I'm Zi Chin.
Yeah, Rizishan.
Yeah, Zi Chin.
Jichin. And how did you get to know about this group?
Through FOD.
FOD. What is FOD?
Fellowship of Dharma.
Oh, it's Fellowship of Dharma. Not Friends of Dharma. Oh, I've been introducing FOD as Friends of Dharma. Fellowship of Dharma. I see. Okay. And what are you doing now? You look very young.
Studying.
Are you young?
Okay.
Okay. What are you studying?
Sec 3.
You're in Sec 3. Secondary 3, 15 years old. I think by any standard that is considered young. Very good to have you with us. Welcome. You have a friend here who is around your same age. Yeah. Who else is new? How about the girl next to you just now?
Hello. I'm Siming.
Siming.
I'm also for fellowship of
And what are you doing now?
studying.
Studying in?
Same age.
Same age as him. Same age. Maybe you are studying, I don't know.
Sec 3.
Oh, Sec 3. Okay. Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you.
How about the two ladies in front?
They're a bit shy.
So next time go and see a doctor. Ask for an allergy form, like, excuse microphone. What are your names? Introduce yourself.
Here I go first. Okay, so my name is Shupam.
But how many times you
It's not my first time here.
Oh, yeah, okay. Hello, Shupam.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm Hui Yi.
Hui Yi.
Yeah.
Yes, hello.
I'm Nobel.
Abel. Yes. Your mom is Samantha, right? I remember. Yes. How is your brother? Your younger brother, right? How is he? How is your younger brother?
Good.
Good. So what are you doing now?
Studying.
Start studying. What are you studying?
I'm Sec 2.
You're in Sec 2.
Yeah.
I see. How about Hui Yi? Same. Sec 2, Sec 2, Sec 3, Sec 3. Okay. Very good. Welcome. Maven has Maven introduced before? Introduced before, huh? Okay. Huh? So how about the right side? Anybody who is new on the right side? I think one look across, I think everybody is a season parking holder. Okay, very good. Welcome to SGC, where we have our weekly group cultivation, short puja, why is the drum so far out today? This recently. Oh no, was the drum here? Yeah. So, So, what is today's date? Today is 22nd. Today is the last week of October. No, second last week. Next week is 29. Next week there's no SGC. Next week will be the, in a way, first time we have a break. Yeah. So moving forward, whenever there's a long month with 5 weeks, then the last week will be a break. Then what should you do next week? So next week, Go what? Chaka? Kyauka? Yeah, next week you all should go and attend the conference. Yeah, there is a Buddhism conference next week organized by the Buddhist Fellowship and many other organizations. Yeah. Huh? The Chaka. Can you volunteer? Oh, you can't ask me. You got to ask them. Because I'm not organizing it. Yeah, I'm sure they'll be happy to have you volunteer. Yeah. So next week will be at Chaka. Chaka would be conducted at the Singapore Expo. Huh? No? SUTD. Oh, sorry. Don't go to the wrong place. SUTD. SUTD, where's SUTD? School of Singapore University of Technology and Design. Okay. Not STUD. STD. SUTD. Yeah. So remember, next week there's no class, okay? No SGC. If you come next week, then you can help to do the painting. What time is my slot? So you all want to go just for my slot, is it? My slot, when is my slot? So my slot is, I think the opening panel. I'm one of the panelists. Then after that there are breakout sessions. I'm with the youth breakout session. So today is the 22nd. So let's try to finish this sutta today. Because after this, next week there's no SGC, then the following week will be on Bodhisattva vows. So it'll be 3 weeks before we come back, for the topic. So if you recall, how many of you have gone back to read up on the Kalama Sutta? Kalama Sutta? How many? Raise your hand like that, so that I can't see. Yeah. Oh yeah, very good. Yeah, no idea who. Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted. Yeah, all my life, since I was a kid, I've always wanted people to just raise their hand this way so that I can't see. Yeah, a show of short hands again. Yeah, how many of you have read the Kalama Sutta? Oh yes, very good. So yeah. So how many of you have read the Kalama Sutta? Okay, 1, 2. Okay, a handful of you. How about the Samaditi Sutta? How many of you have went back to read it? The Samaditi Sutta? Okay, a few short hands. 1, 2, okay. So this is found in what we call the Majjhima Nikaya. Number 9, Samaditi. So, right view. And we have gone through part of the sutta, covering what is unwholesome, what is wholesome. Yeah. So, let me see. So today I'm going to go into a second, third gear already. Yeah. So we'll go a bit faster. Previously we went through the nutriment. Yeah. So what is right view? It is basically knowing what is unwholesome and what is wholesome. And then what are the nutriments? Something very strange going on. Okay. Somehow this set of pen, I don't know how this other set of pen came in. That is very sharp. So nutriments. And then next we have the Four Noble Truths. To know the Four Noble Truths. And then from there, the 12 links of dependent origination. So from aging and death to birth and so on, all the way to consciousness formation, down to ignorance, and then from ignorance to taints. So okay. So do you all know all this? Say yes. Yes. And then you'll be lying. So right view. We have gone through our attitude towards the teaching. We went through the role of right view. That right view is the first of the Noble Eightfold Path. We've gone through this, we have gone through this. Today we're going to go through this and try to finish this and then touch on this. Yeah. So the Four Noble Truths. What are the Four Noble Truths? Do you know about the Four Noble Truths? The Four Noble Truths is at the core of the Buddhist teaching. Yeah. If there's any group that says it is a Buddhist organization, at the core of it must be the Four Noble Truths. Yeah. This is the first of the Buddha's teaching, found in what we call the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the first telling of the wheel of truth. Yeah. So when the Buddha first attained enlightenment, he observed and discovered the 12 links of dependent origination. And by seeing this, and how ignorance starts from the taints, arise from the taints, Then he saw how suffering is and how suffering comes about, how our suffering can come to an end, yeah, and the way to actually lead to an end of it. Yeah. And so, in a way, all this is what is taught by the Buddha in the first sermon that he gave to the 5 ascetics. Let me see how we can condense this. Yeah, meaning it is my aim that, like, imagine if after today you have at least some understanding, such that if you're in a bus, in a train, you're going to, let's say, on a holiday, taking a flight to Japan or Korea, and then somebody sit down next to you, and then see that you're wearing a mala bead, and then look at you like, is that a Buddhist chanting bead? Say, oh yes, yes. Then the person asks you like, so you are a Buddhist? Say, yes. So if the person were to ask you, so what is Buddhism about? So how would we answer? How should we answer to be correct? Yeah, I think sometimes we have this concern that if we were to be put into this situation where, let's say, our colleague, our friends were to ask us, what is Buddhism about? How many of you feel confident to tell your friend, share with your friend what Buddhism is about? How many of you feel confident to share? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. 9 out of, say, about 40, 50, 60 of you. That's about 10%. Yeah, less than 10%. Yeah, or maybe 15%, or slightly more. So, yeah, seriously. Now if that happens, your colleague asks you, hey, you're Buddhist, huh? So what is Buddhism about? How should we tell them? Okay, yeah, that's... Ask them to Google. Yeah. That's one way to reply. Just tell them to Google for it. Yeah. Or to tell them to come to BU to attend SGC, and then they can get the answer. Yeah. Do you think your friend or your colleague will be satisfied with the answer? Maybe not, huh? Yeah. So today I want to perhaps, let's try, okay? Let's try. I will just share very quickly on all these 3 areas. Then you all ask yourself, what are the things you can remember at the end of the day? And what would be the things that you're able to present a complete story of Buddhism? Okay, very quickly. 4 Noble Truths. So, how many truths are there? 4, of course, it's inside. Yeah? Yeah. So the Buddha don't need us to guess. Tell you in your face. How many Noble Truths?
4.
Wow. You are really good, huh? So first things first, there are 4 things that the Buddha has sort of taught. There are 4 aspects of life. Yeah? And there's something about these 4 things. And it is, what is this word? Yeah, that these are truths. What are truths? What do you consider to be a truth? For example, how many of you feel that it's hot? How many of you feel that it's cold? How many of you feel that it's okay? Yeah. How many of you think that it is daytime now? Yeah. How many of you believe that it's daytime now? Now, some of these are actually trick questions, yeah, and it has to do with whether the statement is a truth or not, yeah. So, for example, it is a fact that it is daytime now. So, in fact, the question, how many of you believe it is daytime now? It is actually a trick question, yeah, because you shouldn't be believing that it is daytime. You should be able to say you know it's daytime because you are awake and you can see outside that it's bright and it's sunny. So, ergo, daytime. Yeah, it is a fact. Something that is a fact is a truth, can be evidently proved, can be verified. Yeah. Whereas, like let's say, if I ask you, do you believe that, let's say, an asteroid is going to crash into Earth like next week? Yeah. You may say, I don't think so. But how do you know? You may say, yes, I think it will happen. Yeah. But how do you know? Yeah. But of course, when you talk about asteroids, then there are scientists who are, pointing, what do you call that? Pointing telescopes into the sky and then observing motion of all the extraterrestrial bodies to track their movement and so on and so forth. But still, there were accounts where meteors and some small asteroids actually hit Earth, missing all the detection altogether. Yeah? The point is, there are certain things that we may believe in, yeah? And the fact that it is a belief, so it cannot really be proven. Yeah? It is a belief. It's based on faith. So here, when the Buddha declared what he observed and discovered as truth, there's something here. And it's basically declaring that you don't have to believe in them. Yeah? That you can actually verify for yourself, see for yourself, that it is evident. No? So how many of these things are there? How many? 3, 8, 9, 27? No? 4. 4. Yeah. If someone asks you, I heard there's something called noble truth. How many? How many? 4. Okay. And did the Buddha teach truth or belief? Truth. Wow, okay, very good. Yeah. So at least now, if you now at this point you start to fall asleep, then when you wake up, end of合掌回向. Yeah. Then later you take a train. Then someone asks you, "Hey, you Buddhist?" Yeah. You can confidently say, "Yeah, I'm Buddhist." And when they ask you, "So what is Buddhism about?" Well, the Buddha teach 4 things, and they are truth. Steady already. Yeah. And if they ask you, "So what are they?" "Oh, I fell asleep." Then the rest, ask me next week when you bump into me. Yeah, so exactly what are the 4 things? So a bit more detail of what they are. They are also named noble. Yeah. So I have sometimes suggested another translation because the term that is in Pali is Aryan. Yeah. And in Chinese, this is called Shi Shen Di. So Di is truth. Yeah. Shi is 4. Yeah. Shen is. Yeah. So when they translated noble, they translate from Aryan. Yeah. Because the word Aryan in the English vernacular or some of the translation, they basically use the meaning noble. Yeah. Now, but the Chinese, when we translate as Shen, Fan Shen, it seems to have the meaning enlightened. Enlightened. Yeah. That it is not because the term noble, you can be noble, but you are still a worldling. Yeah. So In most Buddhist texts, you'll see the word Four Noble Truths. And because of the early translations, we all just stick to it in a way. But if I were to follow the Chinese translation, Shen, Shen would be not just noble. Yeah. So the question is, why is it called noble, or for that matter, enlightened? So it is that these are truths that are discovered by the noble ones, observed by the noble ones. Yeah, on one hand. On the other hand, if an unenlightened person were to observe this, it can actually enlighten you. Yeah, it can enlighten you to the truth of the world, about how things truly are. And when you see this truth, then it will change the way you look at this world. It will change you from ignoble to noble, from unenlightened to become enlightened. Okay? So far so good? So how many truths did the Buddha teach? How many, did the Buddha teach belief or truth? No. Wow. Brainwash you. Now, at this point, you must know that this is not brainwashing. This is just knowledge. Yeah? This is the first step of knowing. You just know what the Buddha taught. I'm not saying that you must believe and accept it, but at least you must tell people, if you ask me, this is what is said about the Buddha's teaching. We are not making a claim that this is truth or not, but it is said that the Buddha gave this teaching of truth. And there are four altogether, and it is said that this teaching can, lead you towards the state of enlightenment. And what are they? Firstly, the first noble truth of, yes, this is what all Buddhists know, suffering, suffering, suffering. Yeah, the first noble truth of suffering. And second, I'm going to put an noble truth of cause of suffering. Yes? And okay, let's skip the third and fourth first. So, how many truths? Four truths. What is the first truth? The first truth of suffering. Is it the same as the saying or the sentence, life is suffering? So you must remember, you must know one thing. The Buddha did not say life is suffering. Okay? The Buddha made no such statement. He did not declare life is suffering. Yeah. If you go and look at the teachings, he didn't say that. Yeah. Instead, he declared suffering. Yeah. What is suffering? What is the origin of suffering? What is the cessation? What is the way leading to the cessation of suffering? Yeah. So, the first noble truth is not life is suffering. Of course, sometimes the trouble is, the moment you hear it's not, then you forget it's not, then you only remember life is suffering. So I must cancel this out after writing it. This is not what the Buddha taught. Okay, what the Buddha? Oh, that side is shifted. So you all look at this side.
The projector is saying it.
Yeah, the projector is saying it. So you all look at this side, okay? Yeah. So what exactly did the Buddha teach about the first noble truth of suffering? He teach us, or he share his insight into exactly what we suffer over. Yeah? What are the different aspects of suffering that we experience in life? Yeah? So far so good? Do you know what is suffering? Have you all suffered before? Who has not suffered before? Raise your hand. Oh, can I slap later? Huh? Where is the good Chan Yu? Chan Yu, have you suffered before? Oh. Why you call him? Why you call him tortoise? Yeah. Even a small kid like Chan Yu can suffer also. Chan Yu 有没有哭过? Yeah. Yeah. If we have ever cried before, then we have suffered before. So, let me teach you, share with you a simple way to remember this first, okay? If we denote suffering with S and the cause of suffering with C, yeah, this is a formula that I've been writing. Then, what is the formula that describes the relationship between S and C? Then, S equals to K C plus B, where K is a constant greater than 0 and B is the constant 0. So this forms a fully formed linear equation. And if you draw this out with the Cartesian coordinate S and C, then this basically describes a straight line passing through origin. K is describing the gradient, and the equation S equals to KC plus B cuts through the origin, and the Buddha is basically here, where C equals to 0 and then S equals to 0. And this is the state called Nirvana. And this is the third noble truth of the end of suffering. So far so good? Can you understand? Sec 2, Sec 3, you all should have studied linear equation, right? Yeah, so this is first order, very simple. Yeah, not even quadratic equation. Yeah. Can you solve S equals to KC plus B? Yeah. Solve for S equals to 0. Of course, this is the answer. I shouldn't have given you the answer first. Yeah. If you are given this mathematical equation and then asked to solve, yeah. So if you were to try to solve it, act like we are solving it, then what happened? Then if S equals to 0, then implies that KC plus B equals to 0, and since B equals to 0, so KC equals to 0, C equals to 0. And that's why K must be a constant greater than 0. Otherwise, you have C equals to infinity. You all look very stunned. Huh? Sorry? What? Advisor?
Supposed to be simplifying it for us.
Oh yeah, I'm simplifying for you. You all don't look very convinced that this is simplifying it. It's very simple. So again, how many truths did the Buddha teach? Did the Buddha teach, or actually maybe I should say, did the Buddha teach belief or truth? How many truths did he teach? 4. What is the first noble truth? Not suffering, the truth of suffering. Yeah? And if you denote that as S, suffering as S, what is the second noble truth? Cause of suffering. Yeah? And how is cause and suffering related? Well, cause of suffering give rise to suffering, isn't it? Yeah. So, without going into detail of what is suffering and what is the cause of suffering, the two are related in this way. Where the cause increase, then suffering increase. If cause reduce, then suffering should reduce. Yeah. And if the cause of suffering is totally removed, then suffering should disappear. Agree? Very simple, right? Yeah. And if you manage to remove all of the cause of suffering, then all of suffering should be removed. Yeah? Okay, all of us take a deep breath. Take another deep breath. Take a third deep breath. Yeah. Okay. So, the third noble truth of suffering is when cause of suffering has been reduced and removed to 0, and then suffering also go to 0. Yeah. Recently, let me tell you all a joke, then you all can wake up. Recently, in fact yesterday one mother told me that her son, who is 10 years old in P4, the maths problem, she couldn't help, do correction. She couldn't help to mark check the answers. So she had to ask her friend, who is actually working with MOE. So I was like, and then she said, oh, because my maths is not so good, I'm more an arts person. Yeah. How many of you can relate to that? Because we are more like art people, we are more linguistic, so we cannot mark the primary school maths, primary 4 maths. Think about it, huh? This is what I told her. I said, wait, are you kidding me? She is 4 years older than me. She's a few years older than me, and I'm 44. So I said, are you telling me that at 40 over years old, you are somehow unable to mark primary school maths? Wait, some of you actually agree with that? Huh? Are you kidding me? Really? Now, to be fair, there's one part of primary school maths that even those who are good may not know how to do it, simply because it's something that we didn't learn last time. It's called modeling. Yeah, modeling is not something that we learned in the 80s or 70s. Yeah, so if you are born in the 60s and 70s, you didn't learn modeling. And because you didn't learn, you cannot directly know how to do it. Yeah, because if you never learn, you can't do it. But, what I want to highlight here is, sure, you didn't learn, but how long does it take to learn modeling? How long? 3 years? Cannot be, because it's taught in P5, so within 1 year, they are supposed to learn modeling, right? Is it P4 or P5? Yeah? So, now my question is, if we can say that about modeling, that we should be able to learn, then, now if you look at this is Sec 1 Maths, Sec 1 Mathematics. Yeah. Now I'm not saying that you must learn Dharma in this way, okay? I'm saying there will be things that we have not been exposed to, or that we are stronger or weaker in. And my point is, we shouldn't simply just stare at it blankly and then just close our eyes and I don't know. Yeah? We shouldn't do that to ourselves. Yeah, we shouldn't do that to ourselves. We should ask ourselves, okay, what exactly do we not understand about this? Yeah. How many of you, show of hands, when Sifu write S equals to KC plus B with all the explanation given, can understand readily? Raise your hands up high. Okay? Now, how many of you, after Sifu has explained, still have difficulty comprehending it in any way? Raise your hand up high. Okay? Now, so very quickly, let's just go through. What exactly do you not understand? Any of you? What is K and what is B? Well, first of all, do you all remember algebra? Algebra? These are symbols representing something. Yeah? It's just a variable. Can you remember variable? Don't remember variable. Okay, very simple, very simple. It's okay, it's okay. Today you all get free maths lesson. Sec 1, no? Yeah. In a very, no joke, and I'm not trying to put you all down or tease you or to make fun of you. No. I'm serious. Because Sifu, sometimes when I'm not doing Dharma study, I would ask myself, what are the things that I've learned before or I'm supposed to have learned before, but somehow the concept is still hazy. And I realized at some point, things like root locus. Root locus, I was a bit hazy. Laplace transform, a bit hazy. If you go a bit earlier, then electrical circuits, electronic circuits, RCL, simple RCL. There are some parts which I'm a bit hazy. So I went online, searched RCL circuits. And then when I look at it now, I'm like, this looks so complicated. I read up some of the explanation, then went through some tutorial, Okay, I figured it out. Yeah. So so among other things. So my point is, it's actually not so complicated. Okay, first of all, how many cannot remember what variable is? Cannot remember. Don't know. Don't know, raise your hand. Raise your hand. Don't know. Variable. No or not? No or not? Just now you raise your hand, say don't know, now you know. I still can remember. So those who raise your hand, pay attention like very quickly. A variable is something that stores a number. Okay? And that number can be any number. Okay? Simple, right? That's it. That's a variable. Yeah. Yeah, and it's just a label, a name for a placeholder. Okay? You can treat it as a box or a container. Yeah? Like, if this container, we take a marker and put X here, or we put K here, then this is a variable, and inside can change. Okay? How about a constant? Yeah? Just now I said K is a constant, B is a constant. So a constant is something like a variable. It has a name, a label, but its content don't change. Yeah? Throughout the whole process, the content don't change. That's why it's called a constant. Yeah, it doesn't change. Yeah, so in this case, K is a constant. Okay? As to why is there K, this is to do with mathematics. Yeah, for a linear equation, there is a constant K in front. Yeah, and then B is the intersect. Okay? So as to what it is, somebody has asked me before. So I sort of told them that K representing the gradient, it can indicate how in certain realms, even if you have not much craving that is active, you will still suffer, like in the lower realms. Whereas if you are in the heavenly realm, you don't suffer as much. So the K value is lower. Yeah. But you see, this part is not the crucial thing. If K is equals to 1, what happened? So this is where, let me tell you something. I see a lot of you starting to get confused with, keep on thinking, what is K, what is B, what is K, what is B? K and B is not important. What is S? Louis? What is S? Yeah. I even use red color. The red color is the important thing. K and B is not important. That's why I use black. S and C is the important thing. Yeah, this is why some students, they get stuck with the maths question. You must know what is the important variable here. Okay? Let's assume if K is equals to 1, okay? If K is equals to 1, then basically S equals to C. In other words, if you have more craving, you have more suffering. Yeah. But if you just write S equals to C, then it means suffering equals to cause of suffering, which doesn't make sense. Yeah. Rather is that the value of S is affected by the value of C. Yeah. So it's just like if you eat more, you become heavier. Yeah. Anyway. I think we have to have a separate session on linear equation. Okay, coming back. So, what is the first noble truth? Second noble truth? What is the third noble truth? Hey, don't start remembering S equals to C equals to 0. When the cause of suffering has come to an end, then suffering comes to an end as well. Yeah. So let's go into the detail of what is the noble truth of suffering. In the sutta, it is listed that there are 8: birth, aging, sickness, and death. And then, so this 4 is usually considered as the physical suffering, but in fact it's not really so. Yeah, the first, this 2, 3, 4 is physical. The first one is actually not so much physical. Yeah. But for now, just know lah. Okay, don't try to understand. Just know. Can you all remember what is the first 4? Birth, aging, sickness, and death. Okay. So the next few, in some texts it says separation from loved ones and then contact with unpleasant ones. But in the Pali Canon, then it sometimes has the order slightly differently. Yeah, where it lists out the birth, aging, sickness, and death. Then you have, sometimes you have contact with unpleasant ones. Separation, yeah. Oh. Oh, okay. Yeah. Separation with loved ones. So just so that you all don't have ambiguity, some family emergency. Otherwise, she just suddenly just come, shh, then she go off. Then 5 minutes ago, she was having confusion about algebra. Then you all may think, wow, is it because it's so heavy that she... Yeah, something happened at home. Number 7 is not getting what we want. And number 8, the 5 clinging aggregates. So in the classical teaching, then we list out 8, the set of 8, yeah, starting with birth, aging, sickness, and death, then contact with unpleasant ones, separation from loved ones, and then not getting what one wants, and the 5 clinging aggregates is suffering. Can you remember? But can you understand why these are suffering? Let's skip birth first, or let's look at birth. Is birth suffering? In what way is it suffering? Huh? Yeah, because you are the one who is going to meet the stranger in the bus stop, you know. Yeah, you are the one who is going to be in the train, and then the auntie asks you, "Hey, Buddhist ah? Hey, I heard there's the Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths." Yeah. You're the one whom your colleague is going to ask, your friend is going to ask. So what is Buddhism about? They're going to ask you about the Four Noble Truths. Yeah. So if you were to tell them about the Four Noble Truths, what are the Four Noble Truths? Truth of suffering, cause of suffering, end of suffering, and then the path leading to the end of suffering, which I have not written down yet. Then then after you share in this way, wow, they are so impressed. Wow, you know so much. Then they ask you, so what is the truth of suffering? Then how? What's the truth of suffering? Huh? Then you point them to come to BAU. Huh? This is the problem. Yeah, this is the problem. Because somehow, Buddhists, we don't really have that impetus or the demand that we must learn this. Yeah, so I want you all to look carefully here. Let me get a piece of paper. Okay? Look at this first, okay? This is under the first noble truth of suffering. Can you all read it? Can? Yeah. This religion is damn mafan. At first, was still quite okay. Yeah. Did the Buddha teach belief or teaching? Or teaching truth? Okay, easy. Yeah. Then how many truths? 4 noble truths. Still okay. Well, then in each of the 4, expand out further. Yeah. So, but bo pian lah, because this is how our life is so complicated. Yeah, it's not that Buddhism is complicated. It is that our life is so complex. Yeah. So the first noble truth, birth, aging, sickness, and death. What we usually say in Chinese, 生老病死苦. Yeah. So 厌憎会苦, 爱别离苦, 求不得苦, 无运炽盛苦, 八苦, the 8 kinds of suffering. Now if I were to cover this up, can you all remember? Can remember or not? Sure? Sure can remember. Yeah. You all should make it a point whenever you all attend SGC, bring a notebook and copy down notes. How come you all don't copy down notes? You all ask your children, when you attend class, must pay attention, must take down notes. Then when you attend SGC, you don't take down notes. Now think about it. Birth, aging, sickness and death. Aging, how many of you would like to go through the difficulties of aging? Where your senses start to degrade. Yeah, your vision start to become poorer, your hearing start to go, your smell, your taste, even your sense of touch start to become less sensitive. And then your mind, you start to lose your mind. Yeah? Become forgetful, ability to do simple calculation, understand maths problem, become weaker. Yeah. So aging is a huge thing, okay? Yeah, but there's this part of it which is unpleasant. As we grow older, we also gain in experience, which is not a bad thing. Yeah? But there's the physical part of aging that is usually incapacitating, to different degrees, of course. In modern times, because of the improvement in nutrition, hygiene, and so on and so forth, understanding of medical science, our aging process is much better. Yeah. Hey, hello. How come as I'm explaining the thing, then all of you? If some of you sit down here, do you know what you will see? Yeah. As I'm asking you, then all of you keep looking at the screen for an answer. Then I say, okay, let me explain. Then as I'm explaining, do you know that this teaching, the Four Noble Truths, was first given to the 5 monks? In the first round of teaching, one of them immediately attained enlightenment. I got a feeling he did not listen in this way. Just a feeling. Just a wild guess. In the sutta I never described. But just a hunch. And after the first round, the Buddha didn't stop there. The Buddha gave teachings over the next 6 days. So a total of 1 week of teaching just on the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path was given. Are we giving this teaching for 1 whole day? No. At most 15 more minutes because it's already 3:45. Yeah? Or 2:45. After the end of 6-7 days, after 1 full week, all five of them attained arahanthood. Now, a lot of us have heard about how individuals, Venerable Sariputra, just hear the one verse, boom, attains Sotapanna. Then Venerable Mahamoggallana, within 7 days of his own practice and learning, attained arahanthood. Venerable Konandana attained enlightenment just through the first hearing. The first 5 bhikkhus attained arahanthood after 7 days. I suspect none of them listen to the teaching in this way. Granted, none of them have this with them also. So sometimes you got to ask yourself, like on one hand, we have people saying, don't know leh, is that really enlightenment? But seems very difficult leh. Of course it's going to be difficult if you're going to listen in this way. So, left 13 minutes. Can you all just I mean, there's a lot of things to explain. I don't think we'll cover this. Yeah. So I don't think we'll be covering 12 links. Out of the 4 Noble Truths, I'm trying to explain just the first Noble Truth. Looks like it's going to be right view for a long time. And for the first Noble Truth, I haven't even touched on the second half. Just the first half, okay? Why is the PA link? So, aging. Yeah. You see, the funny thing about Buddhism is, aging is everything that is something that every one of us will go through, isn't it? So why are we not paying more attention to it? How many of you would consider yourself to have aged already? Wow, amazing. That's almost like 70% of the participants here. Now, a good number of you are still very young, 15, 16 years old, some of you 13, 14 years old. But I want all of you who are young to take a look at the rest of them. And I want the rest of you to take a look at them. Think about it. I mean, this is a very in your face, no? It doesn't feel good, but in your face. We all look different, sure. But we were once young. We all look different, but one day you will be old also. Huh? 想当年. Physical aging. But of course, in some ways, it affects your mind as well. Yes. Sorry? Oh, I purposely skipped birth because just now I asked no response. Aging should be something that is apparent. Yeah, especially if 70% of you are already going through aging. So why are we not concerned about it? Yeah? Why are we not concerned? We hear of people with dementia. Why are we not concerned? We hear of people who today okay, tomorrow wake up, wow, half the body a bit numb, or tingling sensation on the finger, on the leg. Why are we not concerned? We should be concerned. We should be concerned that this happens. This is not something that happened in Rwanda. This is not something that happened somewhere far away. This happened everywhere. We should be concerned. And while we don't want to experience and go through all this, trust me, all the 13, 14 teenagers, and including all those in the 20s, trust me, trust medical science, trust statistics. So far, nobody from 20 years old, 15-year-old, spend their whole life as a 15-year-old, and then suddenly, at 80 years old, they suddenly transform overnight. Tonight, go to sleep as a 15-year-old, tomorrow wake up, and then at night die. No, Shifu, for me, my whole family like that one. All of us, when we reach 24 years old, wow, at the peak, wow, young man, young woman, all very nice. Then, as next year, it's still the same, 24, 25 years old. Next year, for the next 60 years, we look at the same health, everything. Then when we reach 84 years old, 85 years old, tonight I go to bed as a 24-year-old, tomorrow we go, then that night I pass away. So I only experienced 1 day of suffering, no problem. Is that the case for your family? Any of you? No. So all of us go through this. So we should be concerned. Yeah? And this is a truth. Yeah? That when aging hits us, nobody likes it. Nobody wants it, but it happens to us. And when it happens, we suffer to different degree, depending on how severe it affects us. And depending on how able we are to accept it or not. Sickness. We all have fallen sick. Yes? To some, maybe less than others. We're not talking about cancer here. We're talking about the fact that occasionally we'll not feel comfortable. Occasionally we'll feel unwell. And it is not by choice. The very definition of sickness, involuntary physical discomfort, physical incapacity. Yeah. And this happens to all of us, young or old. It happens to all of us. So shouldn't we be concerned? We should be concerned. And this is the truth of our existence, that this happens. Yeah? But we don't want to think about it. Yeah. Isn't it? But do you need to believe in this? Aging is not pleasant. Sickness is not pleasant. Do you need to believe in it? In fact, do you need to learn about it? Don't need. Well, we experience it ourselves. But the Buddha, why did the Buddha teach it as a teaching? Yeah, because we tend to just ignore it. We don't want to face it. And we don't think about the implication of it. And similarly for death, whether you are young or old, unless you are dead. If you are dead, you are dead. You cannot die twice. Yeah. As long as you are alive, you can die, potentially. How you die, that's another question. And here we're not talking about, die in a horrible way. In the teaching, when the Buddha described death as suffering, he's not talking about dying in a horrible way. He's just saying that the fact that death causes you to be apart from all the things that you cherish in your life. The whole idea of death itself causes fear, strikes fear in people. There are descriptions of how the process of dying, no matter how serene the person is, as if the person loses the faculties, and then ultimately takes the last breath and loses the ability to live. That itself is painful, it's a struggle. And think about it, it can happen to any of us. Today, we're going to have dedication for Louis Rabbit Xiaopai and Sherry's cousin Michael Chu. Michael Chu passed away at 1:30 a.m. this morning, 55 years old, single. Doesn't just happen to people who got married, 55 years old, you could say, no lah, Sifu, 55 quite old already. Let me assure you, when I was at Mandai a couple of years back, there was a devotee who had a family member who passed away. When I was invited to do a service. So while they were doing the setup, I walk around and look at all the niche, like HDB flat, columns after columns, rows after rows. And as I look at each of these, and I express some thoughts of loving kindness and compassion. But as I look at each of them, then something struck me. It's not all old people, There are young people. And I'm not talking about, they pass away at 80 years old, then they go and put the Ginna photo. No. No, it's not that. It is that when you look at the details, 4 years old pass away. 16-year-old pass away. 86-year-old pass away. 67 years old pass away. 54 years old, 55 years old pass away. 40 years old pass away. 30-something years old pass away. All ages. If you look through, there's no age. Don't worry, Sifu, I'm now 14 years old. Nobody passed away at 14 years old one. Statistically impossible. For 3,000 years, nobody passed away at 14 years old. So, hey, next year, come be sure. No, in fact, if somebody were to go and do actually there are some such studies. There are some ages where, statistically speaking, higher chance of dying if you are male or female, because of certain exposure to risk. And that's why there's something called infant mortality. At a young age, there's a chance that kids can just die because they haven't built up resistance and due to lack of nutrition and hygiene and so on and so forth. But once they cross that path, then the mortality rate goes down. And then when they reach a certain age, then it goes up again. For men especially, because of our exposure to certain danger, either through our own choice or because of our work. But unanimously, universally, death happens to each and every one of us. When I was in Sec 3 or 4, I had a class reunion for primary school. But not the kind of reunion that you may think of. It was the passing away of one of our primary school classmates, Cui Li. This fine young girl. When we were in primary school, she was among the top students. Really brilliant. She was a head prefect. But in secondary school, she drowned in an accident. Yeah. She's not a crappy swimmer from what I heard. But somehow that day she swam and she drowned. And that's it. End of her life. Did she have dreams like us? Yeah, I'm sure she had dreams like us. Did she have hopes? Yeah. Did she have fears? Yeah. Just like all of us. Maybe different dreams, different fears, different hopes. But still much the same. And regardless, once impermanence, death strikes, that's it. Sometimes we go through life and it's like, this is so tough, Yeah. For her, as far as this life is concerned, no longer a question. Yeah. She don't have to make difficult decisions as far as this life is concerned. But in Buddhism, we don't say that this is the end. Yeah, because as long as you're not liberated, then it continues in the next life. But in the process, all this aging, sickness, and death is part of the process of life, tribulation of life, where we come into contact with unpleasantness, things that we don't want, things that is unpleasant, give us unpleasant feelings. And then there are occasions, whether through death or just through facts of life. You see young kids crying at the nursery, in the kindergarten, on the first day of school, separation from loved ones. And these days, it has become almost a fact of life that if you are a working professional and if you are successful, then chances are you have to travel. Yeah? Regional role is almost the default now. So you end up being separated from your family a few times, a few days in a month. Back in the 90s or 80s, when individuals, graduates enter the workforce, it was a perk, to have a job where you get to travel. And so people look forward to that. Then in the late 90s and early 2000s, it became more of the norm. And people started to choose, if they have a choice, not to travel. Now it's no longer a choice, you have to travel. The few jobs that still don't have to travel are just waiting to be replaced by automation. So while the Buddha in those days didn't specifically describe, the conditions that we are facing, he observed how when we are separated from those who are dear to us, even for just a short while, we suffer. And this is not a belief, this is a fact. Just consider Can Yu. The fact that they have to bring him along is partly because of that. He will feel miserable. Can they lock him at home? Can. Tie him to the chair or something. So OC immediately. Of course, we're not going to tie you to the chair. Oh, you're a lovely boy. Huh? And then we come back to birth. Why is birth considered a form of suffering? In some of the commentary texts, you will see descriptions about how going through the process of birth, being in the womb and so on, is stifling, is unpleasant and so on. But if you look at the suttas, that's not the description. It is simply this, that it is because of birth that all this come about. All the suffering we have has birth as a condition. Now you may ask, which sutta exactly said this? Well, if we go into how the Buddha attained enlightenment, what he observed for himself, the very question that started off Buddhism, the very encounter, and I've shared numerously at the Heart Sutra workshop. What did the Buddha observe before he ordained, before he left the palace? What are the 4 sights? Aging, sickness, and death. And fourthly, an ascetic. In some Buddhist texts, even Buddhist texts, some of it get it wrong. Some of it says, oh, the Buddha saw birth, aging, sickness, and death. Wrong. Unequivocally wrong. It is aging, sickness, and death. At that point in time, he didn't see birth as a problem yet. He saw aging, sickness, and death as suffering, and he sought an answer to this. That from aging, sickness, and death, there were all these other problems. But as he went out to learn under the different teachers, none of them offered a solution to aging, sickness, and death. They only offered a way to escape part of it, temporarily or partially, not a complete end to it. And then ultimately, when he meditated, and he calmed himself down, that's skipping some of the details, then he go into the question, so exactly where does aging, sickness, and death come from? What is the condition for it to come about? And as he observed his own life, his past life, everybody else's life and everybody else's past life, then he observed a pattern. And here I ask you, based on your observation and your knowledge, has anyone who has been born not grow old or die? Do you know of anyone who has been born but never grow old and die? Maybe some of them died before growing old, but surely if they didn't die, then they grow old, but ultimately they will die. Agree? So either death comes first, or aging, then death. Agree? As much as many other religion promises no dying. Promises that some religion even promises that they can resurrect you from death. But so far, everybody died. That's the truth. And not to criticize or dispute other people's teaching, but just as a matter of fact. Go and search around, go and ask your neighbor, ask your auntie, uncle, grandfather, mother, hey, do you know of anyone who was born but didn't die? So far, everybody died. And so what the Buddha observed was this also. That as long as someone is born, then aging and death will come about. Sickness is optional. There are some people with good health. But aging and death is quite definite. Then he observed, how so of all those people who age and death, what is the common denominator? In other words, what is common among all those who age and death? There are those who are men, there are those who are women, yeah. People who fall sick, maybe they have certain lifestyle and so on. But those who age, those who fall sick, those who die, they must have been born. Is there anyone who is growing old or who has grown old, fall sick or die, but actually wasn't born? Of course, when you think about this question, it's almost like, what kind of question is that? Common sense, right? Seems to be common sense. But he's the first one to have independently observed this and, in a way, put it to words that, this is the primary condition. Birth as a condition, then aging, sickness and death come about. Now, since aging and death is unpleasant, is suffering, yeah, and since all this is suffering, something that gives rise to suffering cannot be of the nature of happiness, cannot be of true happiness. Something that can give rise to suffering must be of the nature of suffering. Cannot be otherwise. And that is why birth is termed as one of the suffering. Yeah. Now from this sequence, then it is linked to the second noble truth. Because from birth, then he observed and he asked the question, what is the condition for birth? And he observed that as long as there is a being becoming or coming into existence, as long as there's a being coming into existence, then birth can occur. If there's no being coming into existence, then no birth can occur. Yeah, and it's basically saying, how is it possible that Zhuoping is here? There may be many reasons why Zhuoping is here. But one of the primary conditions for Zhuoping to be here is that Zhuoping must have, taken the process of coming here. If there was no process of coming here, then he wouldn't just spontaneously appear here. Yeah, that one moment he was at home, the next moment, boom, what am I doing here? And then he's in his t-shirts and shorts. Cannot be. Yeah, there must have been this process of him coming to be you. Now, if we continue from here, then the next link would be clinging. Yeah, that there's clinging onto this world. And why would anyone cling onto this world? Because there's craving for this world. Why would anyone crave for this world? Because someone had an experience of this world, had feelings for this world. Yeah. And why would anyone have feelings for this world? Because someone had contact. There was a contact of this world. But how is it possible to have contact? It's a sixth sense base. And how is it possible to have the sixth sense base? It's because prior to that there was mind and body, or what we call name and form. And how is it possible to have name and form? It's because of the first arising of consciousness. And this in turn is driven by the past karma, volition, formation. And this in turn is driven by ignorance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. How come only 2, 3, 4, 名色缘六入缘处处缘受处缘爱爱缘取取缘有有缘生生缘老死 okay so 11 12 this one should be 12无名缘行行缘事事缘名色名色缘六入六缘处处缘受受缘爱爱缘取取缘有oh there's a 有 here okay 有缘生缘生缘老死So this is the 12 links, which is the 12 links of dependent origination. Now if the auntie or uncle, the stranger in the MRT is still with you, then first of all you must congratulate that person for staying on the journey with you. You probably have gone to Changi Airport and then come back already. Or go around the circle line a few times. And then at that point in time, the person is just going, and then like a few times asking you like, maybe, then you're like, no, I haven't finished. Sit down. And at that point in time, the person, when you finally finish up to this point, you're like, and that is the end of the first part. And the person is like, why is Buddhism so complicated? Why isn't there some simple one-sentence answer, Yeah. So the thing is, Buddhism is so thorough and complex. It's because the Buddha wasn't just trying to give a simple answer to make people feel good. He was giving the answer, the teaching, the truth, the teaching of truth that can help us put an end to all our suffering. So I ask people this, and today I ask you all again. We give kids 6 years of their life. We demand 6 years of their life to study certain subjects. And after 6 years of studies, what can they do? PSLE? After PSLE, big deal. So what if they got 248 or 284? So what if they get 300? What is the full marks? 300. Let's say they get 300, okay? So what? Big deal. If they stop studying at 300, what can they do? Have you all ever thought about it? No matter how much tuition you put your kid through, how much super enrichment class that they get perfect, 300 points. What can they do at that point in time? Nothing, You go and look at the classified ads. At PSLE, they cannot look at recruitment's page, because recruitment's page is on for the professionals. At PSLE, even if they get 300 points, if they don't go to secondary school, what can they do? And yet, that forms the foundation for further studies. And yet, we demand that they put in 6 years of study. And nowadays, not just 6 years. 6 years plus a lot of tuition. And still most people don't get 300 points. How many students have you known who get 300 perfect score? 0, almost never heard of, right? Yeah? So then you got to come back and tell that stranger in the MRT or in the plane, why should the solution to life be any simpler? And you should tell them, I just took 1.5 hours to explain this. It's not even 6 years. Yes. 四缘名色. How does the 四缘名色, how does this link up? Now before I go into that, and I may want to reserve it for 3 weeks later. And the reason is because at this point in time, I don't know how many of you are still with us. How many of you have already jumped off the train? Or have gone like... So I want to summarize whatever we have gone through and tell you this. There was once this conversation between the Buddha and his disciples. And he said, if someone were to ask of you, what is the purpose, what is it that the Tathagata has taught? What is the purpose of his teaching? Then rightly speaking, you should tell them that the Buddha has taught what suffering is. And he has taught the purpose of teaching that is so that we can put an end to suffering. As simple as that. The details is all inside here. That is the purpose, that is the function of the teaching. Nothing more, nothing less. To tell us what exactly we are suffering over, so that we can pinpoint and eradicate it where it is. Without knowing what suffering is, then we're just shooting all over. And he gave a detailed process of how to overcome suffering. Yeah. So if you cannot remember all this, just remember these two things. Because these two things can and will expand to the Four Noble Truths. The second Noble Truth is basically the 12 links. In the Theravadan tradition, second Noble Truth is craving and clinging. In the past, when we studied in Sec 3, Sec 4, we just memorized it. Yeah, we just memorized craving and clinging is the cause of suffering. But later I realized, I learned that, it's because craving and clinging, once this kick in, there's no turning back. The rest will follow. But before that, you can still stop it, which is where our life is. But if you were to allow craving and clinging to perpetuate itself, then the cycle of birth and death continues. And that's why it's identified as the cause of suffering. In many other texts, then cause of suffering would point to what causes this to happen, which is defilements. For a long time, I look at Mahayana texts. Mahayana texts usually talk about defilements, greed, hatred, and delusion. Yeah? Theravadan texts also talk about that, but specifically cause, it points to craving and clinging. Whereas for Mahayana texts, the cause points to greed, hatred, and delusion. They are linked in this way, because with greed, hatred, and delusion, then as you have contact and feeling, we will get mixed up. Then we will crave. If you don't have greed, hatred, and delusion, you can have all the contact and feeling, but not crave. Yeah, but that's too much detail. Remember your question. We'll come back to it 3 weeks later. Oh, you got one question.
The first 10, is it before while you're conceived or after your birth?
The first 10. So, number 1 and 2, ignorance and volition formation, in this sequence is referring to past life. Consciousness is referring to the first awareness that arises in this life. And then from here up to sixth sense base usually is once you have already come into this world. And then you have repeated contact. Not just one contact, but multiple contacts, multiple feelings. And driven by more ignorance, although it starts here, but throughout this whole process, it's always colluding, giving rise to greed, hatred, and delusion. Greed, hatred, and delusion. So, having more and more craving, planting, and then in the process, planting seeds. And usually up to this point, we say, from 9, then we can have a dotted line, and this is this life. Yeah. From 10, 11, 12. 11, 12 is clearly next life. Number 10 can be considered in between this and next life. Oh. So, did the Buddha teach belief or truth? How many truth? What is the first noble truth? Truth of suffering. Second, cause of suffering. Third, cessation of suffering, end of suffering. Fourth, the path leading to the end of suffering. So if you look at the curve again, the path is a vector along this line that brings you down to the origin. Yeah. Now, if you can at least remember this schematic, this is the start of right view. Yeah, this is the start of right view. We haven't gone into the implication if you adopt this as your mindset. Yeah, but at least you must know what is right view first. To know this is the start. Yeah, knowledge of right view. Doesn't mean you have right view yet. Yeah, because you cannot even remember the whole thing, number one. Number two, you may not agree with the whole thing yet. Number three, you cannot understand yet how to agree. Yeah. Yeah, so, but at least the first step, you know part of it. Next week, there's no class. Next week is Bodhisattva vows. Next week, 3 weeks later, we'll come back and revisit right view. Put our palms together. I'd like to extend dedication to Louis Rabbit Xiao Pai and Sherry's cousin Michael Chu, who has passed away at 1:30 a.m. this morning. May they have the conditions to be reborn in a happy realm, in Pure Land, to come into contact with the Triple Gem, learn and practice the Buddha Dharma, and in due time attain final liberation. 愿消三障诸烦恼，愿得智慧真明了，普愿罪障悉消除，世世常行菩萨道。阿弥陀佛，起立。